Hilchas Tumas Ochlin Perek Shishi. Now this peri is coming behamshach to the dinim of a shemer. We learned before that a shemer leperi, like the peel on a peri, is considered as metame or mistame, and it's also mitztaref to the peri. Question is, how long does the shemer have a din of a shemer? Because when the shemer starts becoming detached from the peri, at what point in time is it no longer a din of a shemer? And then there's also halachas over here about foods that are beginning to become detached from each other. So the question, at what point in time are they considered separate? And therefore, if one of them is tamei, the other one is not tamei anymore. And at what point in time, even though they were partially detached, they're still considered connected. And if one becomes tamei, the other one also becomes tamei. Perek shishi. Ha'gezim v'ashkedim shenizdeka klipasim. So their klipa is the hard, a nut or an almond, they have hard shells. So therefore, even though it's cracked, is nevertheless adayin hu chibur le'echel. Still, the fact that it's cracked doesn't make it uish shemer. It's still considered a shemer to the echel, and therefore it's connected to the echel. Achi yiratzet is a klipa until you smash the klipa. When you smash the klipa, so it's very easy for the klipa to come off the echel. At that point in time, the klipa, the shell, is no longer considered a shemer. Halacha beis. Beitza migulgelis. So beitza migulgelis means a soft-boiled egg. So when you cook an egg, so then the egg is easier for it to turn. There's a raw egg, you can't turn it. It turns very slowly. When it's cooked, so then it's easier to turn. That's taich beitza megulgelis. It was cooked to the point where it could be easily turned, but on the other end, it's not hard-boiled, it's soft-boiled. Beitza megulgelis is mishayike b'makim legama mimenu. When you have a little hole in this egg where you could suck out the egg from the inside of the shell. In other words, the shell is still there, but you could suck it out, so it's a hole. So ein shar klipas a chibur. So the klipa is not a chibur. Why? Because since we're dealing with a soft-boiled egg, so obviously, so the soft-boiled egg is going to start sipping out from this hole. So therefore, the klipa is not a shemer. However, a shluka, if we're dealing with a hard-boiled egg, and there's the egg that was already cooked, so then klipas a chibur. Even if it has a little hole, the klipa is still a chibur. Achi yiratzis a klipa until you smash the klipa on the egg, and then it's very easy for the klipa to come off. So then it's no longer a shemer. Then the imnitabla beklipasa. There's a musik vaisus that they used to like spice the egg. They would take spices and mix it with water and put it on top of the egg. So then when you would eat the egg somehow or another, you would eat the egg and the klipa would be probably partially there. So then you would like be eating the egg together with the tavlin, with the spices which are on the klipa. I don't think they ate the klipa. They just ate the spices which are on the klipa together with the egg. So memela, so even if the klipa is smashed, but you're interested in the klipa staying there, because the klipa is not only there to preserve the egg, the klipa is there in order for you to have the klipa with the egg when you have the spices. So you lick the klipa. So therefore the klipa is like bottled to the egg, and therefore it's considered a chibur. That's what we're saying. That's what Kes Mishnah teaches. If it was spiced together with the klipa, so then avol b'shiritzit, so even though you smashed the klipa, abekuli chibur, because you're interested in the klipa being there together with the egg for the spices. Halacha gimel. Etzem sheyesh b'meach. If you have a bone and that bone has marrow in it, so chibur, so the bone and the marrow is considered a chibur. Ad sheyiratzit, until you smash the bone. So even though the bone was also cracked, but nevertheless the marrow, it's still considered a shemer to the marrow until you actually are miratzis. You smash the bone. Now tzemer shebarashi akvasim, the wool that's on the heads of the sheep, or the seir shebiskanat yoshim, or the hair which is in the beards of the goats, is afal pi shecharchem bu'or, even though you started singeing it with fire. Nevertheless, until you actually start pulling it off, which shows you're not interested in it being there, it's considered a chibur, and it's considered a shemer to the flesh which is on the head or on the face or on the where the beard comes out of. Halacha dalet. Kanfei chagovim v'kaskasi dogim. So kaskasi dogim is the scales of fish and the wings of the chagovim. So vice is that they have like a bad odor to it. So therefore you take a knife and first before you start taking off the kanfi chagovim, those wings, and before you start taking off the scales, you put a knife to it in order to take away the zuama, it says. Is afal pisha hever sakan aleim, you already put a knife over them, but you didn't start taking them off. You put a knife over them in order to cleanse it. Nevertheless, chibur is still considered mechuber, because it's preserving the chagavim, it's preserving the dogim. Is chibur achi yaschel lekalif, until you start peeling it off. When you start peeling it off, so then it's no longer considered a chibur, and therefore, if something tummy touches the kaskasim, so the dag will become tummy. When you start taking off the kaskasim, so even though some kaskasim are still left, but once you start taking off the kaskasim, once you start taking off the scales, so it's not considered a chibur, and therefore, if something tummy would touch the kaskasim, the dag wouldn't be tummy. Now, harimain sheparde, you have a pomegranate which you cut in half. So, in other words, the pieces are still connected, but they were already opened up. In other words, you opened up the pomegranate, you could see inside the pomegranate. The question is it considered connected? So the din is chibur, the whole pomegranate is considered connected because they're all together in there. Until you bang the pomegranate with a con in order to start getting the seeds out of the pomegranate, so then those seeds become disconnected. The seeds are very firmly in the pomegranate. So even though you cut, the pomegranate was open and you could see inside the pomegranate, but still the whole pomegranate is considered one thing. But once you bang it with a kana, so then those seeds become detached from the inside of the pomegranates, even though they're still inside. But once they when they became detached, so at that point in time, they're no longer connected to the gapitume, and when you touch one, the others don't become tummy. Halacha hasharvitim shel tmarim, the shoots of the tmarim, of the dates, which the tmarim hang on each one of these sharvitim. So the din is enam chibur zelazeh. There's one sharvit, even though they're both hanging on the machped that we said before. They're both hanging on the machped, but lepel, one sharvit is not connected to the other sharvit. And memela, so when one of them becomes tummy, the other one doesn't become tummy. Now halacha vov. Now this is like it's not such. Next halacha is a psadi on exactly how you learn pshat. Let's say the pshat the way the Ram Ma'orach says pshat. Halacha vov. Melafefein shechatchei. Now you have a cucumber which you cut up. You didn't cut it up completely. In other words, the slices are still connected. You sliced it partially on top, but on the bottom the slices of cucumber are still together. And the nosnei ala shulchan, you put it on the shulchan. So the din is chibur. So even though you started, there's slices. The slices don't go all the way to the bottom. They're sliced on top, and on the bottom they're connected. So chibur. So this cucumber is considered one cucumber. So in other words, if you touch one part of the cucumber, if the tumah would touch one part of the cucumber, the rest of the cucumber would also become tummy. Until you start taking it apart. Now his chalafarik, when you started taking it off, so as I say, so now the way he's teaching, pshat is you started taking it off, but you didn't take it off yet. Because once you took it off, so you took it off. But over here we're talking about that you started taking it off, and the question is what's considered, and at that point in time, while you were taking it off, before you actually managed to take it, so the question is, what is this piece of cucumber that you're taking off connected to? So any part of the cucumber that's going to come up with the piece of cucumber that you're picking up, let's say you have a cucumber that was divided into 10 parts. You picked up one of those pieces, and now you started picking up one of those pieces. So let's say lepel, after you finished picking up the one piece, 2 pieces came along with it. So you have 3 pieces in your hands. So over here, even before you actually picked it up, as you're starting to pick it up, nothing was divided yet. So we're saying since these 2 pieces went up with the one piece, so those 2 pieces are considered part of that one piece, and therefore, if while you were picking it up, or a tumah touched this one piece or the other 2 pieces, so then all 3 of them became tummy. But the rest of the cucumber, which didn't come up with you when you picked it up, is ain't a chibur. It's not chibur. Once you picked it up, so obviously it's not chibur. The chiddush over here is that the sh'ar, which didn't come up with you after you picked it up, is not a chibur even before you picked it up. It was while you were picking it up. So the part that ended up coming up with you had a din of a chibur. the part that ended up not coming with you doesn't have a chibur even before you picked it up. That's this din. Vashar ein chibur. That's this din. Now, pika hatachtena, listen, a cucumber, there's like a part at the end, which is like a round part, the head of it, or the bottom of it, which you don't really eat. So then it's in, and chibur lasma, that's considered something which is attached to itself. Ve'en chibur lechatechas, because you're not really interested in eating it. So therefore, the only thing that's chibur is considered the part that you're interested in eating, the part of the cucumber which you're interested in eating, that's considered chibur, because at this point in time, you can actually pick up one and pick them all up together, and pick up the whole cucumber together, all the pieces together. Masha'inke, this part which you're not interested in eating, is not considered a chibur. That's this din. Now, then the Rambam says, Hoyu shnayim eshleishim lafafenis. You had 3 cucumbers, and v'chata kol echad mem, you again went and cut them all. V'yinichan al shulchan, and again, you didn't cut it all the way. If you cut it all the way, so they're separate pieces. We're talking about on the bottom, they're still connected, and on the top, they were cut. Now, v'hischil be'echad mem, and then you went and started eating one of the cucumbers. So the din is zeh shehiskal beichibur, the one that you started is a chibur, v'ashar in chibur. Now it means like it's the same din that we started learning in the beginning of halacha vav. The halacha vav we spoke about that there was one cucumber. So over there we say that the part that comes up with the part that you picked up is a chibur, and the rest is not a chibur. And really, the rest is not a chibur to the part you picked it up. But the rest is a chibur to itself. In other words, you have a piece of cucumber that's divided into 10 parts. Now you started picking up one part. Now even before you picked it up, so we say the part that's going to come up is considered connected to this one part. Lepel, 3 pieces came up. So all these 3 pieces are considered one, and they were considered one even before you picked it up. The other parts, the other 7 pieces, even before you picked it up, are not considered part of these 3 pieces. But these 7 pieces are considered part of each other. In other words, they're still attached to each other. That's only when we're talking about one cucumber. Masha'inkin, when you have 3 cucumbers, so since you're only interested in eating this cucumber, so that's how he explained that Amar brings from Mefarshim that the only time that it's considered a chibur is if I'm interested right now in eating it. So if I'm interested in eating it, so I gain by the fact that they're connected, because when I pick it up, I can pick them all up together. Masha'inkin, if I'm not interested in eating them now, so the chibur is irrelevant to me. I have no need for the chibur. If I have no need for the chibur, so then it's not considered a chibur. It's like a chidush a little bit. Normally you would say lechura if you didn't pick it up, so lechura, if for sure should be a chibur. That's what he's saying. That lepel, the part that you're not eating, is not a chibur even before you picked it up. Is nachamo. If a person had hoyu shnayim eshleishim lafafenis, there were 2 or 3 cucumbers. And v'chata kol echad mem, you went ahead and you cut all of them, each one of them, and v'nichon al hashulchan. And v'hiskul be'echad mem, you started eating one of those cucumbers. Is that shehiskul be, the one that you started eating is chibur, and it's chibur in the way that we learned in the beginning, like as if there would be one cucumber. The other 2 cucumbers, since that's not the one you're eating right now, you're only eating this one cucumber, so memela, that's not considered a chibur. Nachmer, afilo amar, chetzi an yechol shachris, v'chetzi arvis, there's one cucumber. And he says, I want to eat only half of this cucumber now, and the other half of the cucumber I'm only going to eat in the evening. Is that chetzi shehiskul bei? That chetzi shehiskul bei is chibur. And again, what does it mean, chibur? Chibur means al derech, like you said in the beginning of halacha vav. Said that zeh she'eli means chibur, and the sh'ars is not a chibur to the zeh she'eli, but they're chibur latzmam. But v'hash'ar ain't a chibur. The rest is not a chibur. So it's a little bit. So in other words, we're saying that this gather of the chibur of this cucumber is only because I'm intending on eating it. So that intent to eating it creates a chibur. But on the other hand, it's only a chibur on the part that comes up together with it. Halacha zayin. Hamechatech yirakis ukiyetz levashel. Now, if a person is cutting these yirakis, the same exact case like we said by the cucumbers. But by the cucumbers over there, he's talking about he put it on the table to eat. And then we say that it's considered a chibur, and it can be considered a chibur, but over here he put it in order to cook. Even though he didn't cut it all the way and separate one from the other, is any chibur. It's not considered a chibur. Even though there's somewhat of a connection, but nevertheless we say that one is, because Lepel, since Sof Kol Sof, he's going to cook it, and they're going to become separated. He has no interest really in them being together. He doesn't gain anything from them being together. So Memela, so therefore in Nitmazel and Nitmazeh, they're not really considered connected. Now Chotach Lichbesh, he did this cutting again. He cut it in a way that he started cutting it, but he didn't cut it all the way. So they're still connected. But the purpose was, so there was a purpose to eat. That was one situation. We had a purpose to cook. And now we have a purpose, Chotach Lichbesh, he wants to pickle it. A lishleik, but lishleik is already overcooking. There's cooking and overcooking. And vice is when you would do shlika, when you'd be shaylik, so then it would ultimately not separate. In other words, at first it would become soft, and because of this overcooking process, it becomes hard, and they remain together. So they will remain together. So by lichbesh they'll remain together where he pickles them. A lishleik, oil aniach al shulchan, which we learned before. So then it's harei a chibur, and then it's considered a chibur. Vafilim hiskel lefarik mashachatach, even if he started taking it apart, but nevertheless the part that's left over is a chibur. The part that's left over is not a chibur to the part that he picked up. And even before he actually picked it up, in other words, when he's picking something up, so the part that's not going to go up with that one is not considered a chibur. But the part that's left over, which he has intention of eating right away, it's not that, like the case where he said he's going to eat half of it in the morning, half of it at night. He's going to eat all of it till now. So then it's considered a chibur. It is a chibur. Fila hiskel lefarik ma shechatach. Halacha ches. Kol eichel shadayin li pirkei. An eichel which you still didn't take apart is chibur. And therefore, v'im nitma mektsasi nitma kulei. That's so clear. I mean, l'chura, it's coming behemsha to what we're learning till now. In other words, when you have food that's partially separated, so as long as they're still connected, so they're considered a chibur. And v'im nitma mektsasi nitma kulei. Not so clear. Halacha tes. Oichel shenifras u'mu'ura b'miktsas. Now, until now, we were talking about something that you actually cut. And the intent of cutting, so the question is it still considered connected or it's not still connected? Over here, we're talking about it was nifras, it fell apart. It wasn't that you cut it with the intent of having it cut and connected. Over here, it was nifras. It became partially separated, but not with intent. And it's still connected partially. So you have a piece of food that was originally one piece of food, and now it's partially cut, and it's still partially connected. And v'noga tami be'echad mem. And a tummy touched one side of this food, which is partially separated. Zazeh. Im achaz b'zeh shenoga be. V'asheni elime, if you're going to hold the part that the tummy touched, the other part, which the tummy didn't touch, will be oiled together with the part that the tummy touched. So then, as harei chibur, that's considered chibur, and that other part, which wasn't touched, becomes tummy with the part that was touched. However, if it'll hold up the part which the tummy did touch, the other part which he didn't touch will fall off. So then, in a chibur, then it's not considered bottle to the parts that he touched. So then the other one has a din like a separate piece of food, and a separate piece of food that touched the original piece of food. So then you have to go to that has a din as it touched the original piece of food. Now, so let's say if a rishon touched the original piece of food, so the piece of food became a sheni, and now the question is if the sheni can be matami the next piece of food. So if it's chulin, so he can't be matami the next piece of food. If it's truma, it could be matami the next piece of food. By truma, it can become puzzle. Halacha yud. Kol ha'echlin she'ya'olav eklachin michubarim behem. You have leaves or stems that are connected to the eichel. So we hear eshet darki liyachiz be'olah, echz nesi be'olah, beklach, echz nesi beklach. If it's the derech to hold it with the leaves, you hold it with the leaves. With the stem, you hold it with the leaves. And im nitli imei, if it hangs with it, there is a chibur. Even b'tful yem. Even b'tful yem, even if a tful yem touches one part, the other part becomes tummy. Now, the Ram is coming behemshich. Maybe it's pashut. The Ram is coming behemshich to halacha tes. So now halacha tes, we had a din that if you have oichel shenifras, you have food that was partially separated, and a tummy touched one part, And the question is if the other part also becomes tummy. So the din is if the part that the tummy touched, if you pick it up, and the part that the tummy didn't touch will be picked up together with the part that the tummy did touch, so that part becomes bottled to the part the tummy touches, and it all becomes tummy. Now that's talking about a din when we're dealing with a food that has no handles and it has no other way of picking it up. So you pick up one piece of food, and then you see whether the other piece of food is hanging together with this piece of food. You pick up the piece of food that the tummy touches, and then you see whether the other piece of food is still connected to that piece of food, and then it becomes tummy. Now over here we're talking about a food that has a way to hold it. You don't hold it by picking up one piece of food, and then you take a look to the other piece of food is hanging. There's another way of picking it up, either by the leaves, or by the stem, or by the yat. And then you see whether when you pick it up, are these two pieces being picked up together, or they're not being picked up together. If the two pieces are being picked up together through picking up the leaves or the stem, so then they're both considered connected. And then if one is touched by a tummy, so it all becomes tummy. And if not. Masha'inkin, if we're dealing with something that has no leaves, no stems, no yad, so then the eight says halacha tes. That's l'chura what it says here in halacha yud. Let's read it again. Kol ha'echlin shaya'olin eklachin mechubarim them is eshe darke liyachas bi'allah exenes ba'allah beklach exenes beklach. Im nitli imei, if it's all hanging with it, is that is a chibur. B'tful yem, even if a tful yem touches one, so everything is mechuber. Ve'in tzarech leim b'shar tumas. V'chein im hoyo liyad. If this had a handle, if this food has a handle, is also oichs and so you hold the food with a handle. Now hoyso liyad v'olah, it had saya handle and saya leaves. So then oichs and which either one you could hold it with, and then you take a look to see whether these two pieces are being held up together. However, it didn't have a handle, it didn't have leaves, so now you want to know whether or not these two pieces are united. Is bezeh amru, on that's what we said in halacha tes. If you're going to pick up the one that's tummy, you know, the one that touched the dover tummy, and the other one will be oile imei, so then it's chibur. But if not, ain't chibur. Halacha yudal. Hey goizim nuts. Shekitzitzam bi'uktzeyim kshein rakim. You cut it with their stems that are sticking out from it while they were soft. V'omnam kulon k'mei chavel. And you attached it. If I says you attached the nuts to each other through their stems, you made like a rope out of these nuts. K'mei chavel. V'chein aptzolim. The same thing you could do with onions. Shechibram b'derech hazeh. So now the onions, each one have a stem coming out of it. So you connected the onions to each other, and they became like a rope of onions. So the din is harei lechibur. So there's considered a chibur, and therefore chibur means that if one of them becomes, if a tummy touches one of them, all of them become tummy, even though be'emes l'chura separate entities, but they're considered united. Now hischel lefarik be'gezim or lefakel be'ptzolim, you started separating it. So you have a rope of a gezim, or you have a rope of ptzolim. So now you started separating it as ein ashar chibur. Now the rest also is not a chibur. Afilo hayu lefan of meir kur. You have a lot of psalim, 100 kur. Each kur is 30 saw. Is ein kulam chibur. They all become uis chibur. Shari chiach shedaiti lefarak hakel. So when you connected them, and they're still connected, so they're all a chibur. But as soon as you start separating it, so then they all become uis chibur. Now kliya shel shum. Shenaflu mashkin alechad mehem is hu tamei v'chiburi tor. Now you have a clear shel shum, it means you have garlic. Somehow or another, the garlic, you braid it together, garlics, heads of garlics, and now they're united. So here he's saying that even though before we spoke about the gezim and the ptzolim, that you were able to unite them and they had a din of a chibur, but by garlic, when you make you braid the garlics together, so then a mashke fell on one of them, so the one, mashke tummy we're talking about, so the one that the mashke fell on is hu tummy, the garlic which is connected to this, by braiding it together, is tor she'en chiburi adam chibur l'chol davar. Because when you connect something together, it's not always have a din of connection. And therefore, even though before he said that the agezim had a din of connection, by psalm had a din of connection, But over here, by the garlic, it doesn't have a din of a connection. It's not connection l'chol davar. And we'll soon see that legabi certain things it does a din connecting l'mashal to transmit tumah, where the din is that to transmit tumah it has to be a kabetza, so you can have that it's considered connecting legabi the fact that it would be transmit tumah with a kabetza. But on the other end, it's not considered connected in order that they'll contract tumah together. In other words, this item is not considered connected in the sense that if each piece is Torah and now they're connected, they will contract tumah together. If one of them contracts tumah, that doesn't mean that the other contracts tumah. But on the other end, if they're all tamei and now they were connected and they become a kibetza, so then you can have tumah, like we'll see b'hamshach. Nachamol she'ein chibur adam chibur l'chol davar v'chein esrik shenifresh. You have an esrik that fell apart, and v'tachvei b'kush, and you connected the two parts of the esrig with like a stick, a little stick that like a pin, or bekisim, or with a splinter, is any chibur. It's not considered a chibur. And notice the fact, notice we're dealing with two pieces of food, and you're connecting it, so it's a man-made connection. A man-made connection is not considered a proper connection, and therefore, when one of them becomes tummy, the other one doesn't become tummy. Now, Isa, the same halacha, Yud Gimel, Isa, shalosh b'meiperes. If you have a dough, and that dough was kneaded together with meiperes. So memela, it's not mashkin. It doesn't have a din of mashkin. Water has a din of mashkin, and there's design mashkin, but this is not mashkin. Is ein chibur. That's not considered connecting. She'ein lecha davar shemechaber so'echlin el shiva mashkin belvad. In other words, if something was connected with the shiva mashkin, for example, if you have a dough that was kneaded with water, so the whole dough is considered one piece of food. Masha'inkin, if you have a dough that was kneaded with, let's say, apple juice, so the apple juice doesn't really have a din of a mashkin, it's just meiperes. And memela, the dough is not considered one piece of food. And therefore, if you touch one side of the dough and it's tummy, so that part of the dough which you touched became tummy. Masha'inkin, the rest of the dough is not tummy. You squeeze food one in the other, v'kiptzon, and you made it into one piece. Kigin hadvela, like figs, v'hatmarim, and dates, v'hatzimukim, and raisins, shekiptzon, v'ason guf echad, you put them together, and you made it into one big block, is einon chibur. And lefichov, therefore the din is eagle shel dvela. If you have an eagle that's made out of figs, it's pressed figs, shenaflut mashkan tmeim al miktsasei, is harezin netel mimenu, became a mashka bilvad, only the part where the mashka touched, that's tummy, v'hashar tor, and the rest is tor. So here we're learning again that the din is that when you put things together by man-made, so then it's not really considered one thing, and therefore, when one of them becomes tummy, the other one doesn't become tummy. So even though we started off on halacha yud aleph, that by the agazim, that omnam kulam k'meichavel, they do have a din of a chibur, until you start being mefareg them. But until you start being mefareg them, they have a din of a chibur, and al derez by the psolim, they had a din of a chibur, when you make a rope out of psolim, but that was special din when you get agazim and psolim. But Sheinkin, the Ram brought a few dinim of shum, by shum, and al derez and the gera isa shenilation meipedes, and gregris and tamarim and simukim, which you crushed one with each other, and you made from that one big block. But nevertheless, it's not considered one piece because they're all separated. Halacha tezvov. Now hatamarim v'hagregris shesholkam v'naso So now is ariza chibur. If you went ahead and cooked the dates or the figs, and they became one big block together through cooking, so then is ariza chibur. That does have a din of a chibur. Halacha tezayin hazeisim she'otnom v'naso gush echad. Now you took the olives, you put it into a matan. Matan is a place where the zeisim like develop more. They become warm and soft, and they become united. And over there, they become more ready for also for pressing olives. So now they became one big block. The zeisim you put into a matan, and they became one gush echad. Is over here hareza chibur. Why? The purpose of putting it in the matan is that they should nurture one from the other, and therefore the juice of the oil of the shemen should be flowing from one to the other. And shemen is the one of the shemen zayis, the one of the zayin mashkin. So mele they could unite the zeisim to become one. Lefichach, since the din is that the zeisim which were in a matan and they became a gush echad, have a din of one, is sheretz, shenimtza alum shel zeisim, ve'in ha-zeisim shenasim kulam guf echad. That's what shel zeisim means, is afilu naga b'kaseira, even if the sheretz only touched in a part of this which is the size of a seira, hakel tummy, it's all tummy, shehakel guf echad. Now, hoya loy shel zeisim, he had this big block of zeisim, v'asid lahopcha, and his intention is to turn it over in order for the purpose of it ripening, but you're turning it over, so mele, when you turn it over, so it's going to fall apart. Is kivin shetaka b'yisayasid, as soon as you put the spade into this maton, into this block of zeisim, aval pi sheyesh ba gushim harbe, even though there's big blocks, nevertheless, einam chibur. However, and also after you turned it over, it became again a big block, is also in the chibur. It's not a chibur. So in other words, when you put it lechatchila into the maton, in order for it to become a big block, and the taka become a big block, so then it's considered a chibur. Masha'enkin, when you put a spade in there, in order to turn it over, and then things are going to fall apart. So even though there are going to be blocks in them, but nevertheless, it's not a chibur. They're not a chibur. And even if later on, after you turned it over, it again becomes a big block. So since it wasn't, he said, it was al menashiyid because there was a mashenkin over here. Once it fell apart, so it doesn't become a chibur, even if again it becomes a gushach. Halacha yud zayin. Eichel parid, you have pieces of food which are separate. Aber shilkuli mechunis, you put them all together, and v'davek zebezeh, and they're attached one to the other. Is afal pi she'eni chibur listame, like we learned that chiburi adam eni chibur, so memele, if the tumah touches one side of it, even though it's lechura one piece, they're all together, but nevertheless they didn't all become tummy, because lepel, each piece is a separate piece. The eni chiguf echad k'meisha b'yarnu, because chiburi adam eni chibur, aber harei mitzdarif l'kebetza. Legabi this din, that in order to metami something else, you have to have a kebetza, so the kebetza has to be one kebetza. So memele over here, the din is that if you connect different pieces of food together, which are tummy, and now you have a kebetza of tummy dika food, even though they're made up of small pieces of food, like we learned before, that we had the story that there was a dough, and there was flour, and there was a meat, and there was other things. The Ram said you put them all together and you made it one mass. So the din is hareo k'mitzarav l'kebetza l'tami tumas ochlin acherim. But that's only if you made it into one mass. However, v'imlei kansei, if you have a bunch of pieces of food together, and let's say they're all in one bowl, but lapel, they're not attached together to become one mass, el hareu mefurid k'maisegdera, like let's say you have kasha or vakitnis, or you have beans, they're all together, but they're not really united to become one thing. Is ein mitzdarif? They're not mitzdarif. Achi kaptzim v'yasud gushechad. So in order to become one thing, that they should become makabel tumah, that the whole thing should be makabel tumah ke'echad, they don't become. But they could become one thing in order to transmit tumah alza kebetza, but that's only if they are a gush echad. Mashenken, if they're not a gush echad, so even for that, they're also not considered one. Now, hoya gushim harbi zemitzadze, you have different pieces of mass, those pieces that were stuck together, a number of them, one next to each other. And avatuma touched in one of these gushim, so the din is hareu rishon, so the whole gush becomes a rishon l'tuma. Now v'hagush b'tzidei sheni, and the gush next to it, which is really separate, becomes a sheni because it's touching the rishon. V'b'tzad sheni, which is next to the sheni, becomes a shlishi. V'b'shad shlishi revi. So I mean, if it's truma, so then it can become a shlishi, and if it's kodesh, it can become truma. Now the gush itself becomes, the whole gush becomes stomach. L'chura, we learned till now that chiburi adam is not a chibur, so why is the whole gush becoming tummy? So the Mefarshim bring that we're talking about over here a gush which was made together through water. And if it was made through water, so that through mayim, since mayim is from the Zion Mashkin, so it does have a din of a chibur. So if you have a mass of things which was connected, let's say if you have a maisik dera, but the maisik dera was cooked with water, so then that maisik dera was cooked with water and it became a gush, so then it's considered one thing. We don't say chiburi adam ein chibur, and then the whole thing becomes a rishon. Now this whole rishon makes the gush next to it a sheni, and the sheni makes a shlishi and then a revi. Halacha yutches kikar shel truma shehoyse rishon l'tumah. You have a kikar shel truma which is a rishon l'tumah, v'hishach lo acheres, and you connected other kikres together to this kikar. So in other words, it's not only that you touched it, you actually squeezed them together and you connected them together. So then kulam rishon. So since now this other kikar became like part of this kikar, which is a rishon l'tuma, so they all become a rishon l'tuma. Now pirsha, now you disconnected it. In other words, the kikar acheres which you connected to the original kikar, which was a rishon, now you disconnected it. So he rishon. So obviously the original kikar of truma is still a rishon. The other ones are shniyas because they were connected to the rishon. Now, hoise shniya, if the original kikar was a shniya, and vehishaklu acheres, and you connected acheres to it, you squeezed it together and it became one, so then kulon shniyas, they all become shniyas. Pirsha, if you separate it, is he shniya, so the original one still remains a shniya, pasha, and the kulon shlishis, they're only shlishis, because they were connected to a sheni. Now, hoise shlishis, if the original one was a shlishis, vehishaklu acheres, and then you put together others, and now you want to be mitzaref it to the shlishis. So the din is no that the pale truma, knows a shlishi can't be metame. So therefore he shlishis. The original one remains a shlishi. That's pashut. Abevekulan teres. The other ones are teres. But shapir shemein shlei pirshu. So this musik of becoming connected. So you assume the madrega of tuma of the thing that you became connected to that works by a rishon and a sheni, but not by a shlishi. By a shlishi, when you become connected to a shlishi, so you can't assume the tuma of the shlishi. The original kikar is a shlishi, and the truma and the kikar which became connected is still doesn't become tamieru. Halacha yutes. Kikres shel truma noishche zebezu. Now, till now we're talking halacha yutes. We're talking about the original kikar shel truma was tamei, and then you took kikres teheres also of truma, and you connected to the one that was tmei. Now over here we have kikres shel truma, which were noishche zebezu. You have kikres shel truma which are touching each other. Like sometimes you have chalas, chalas in the oven. They're touching each other. They're connected to each other. Is nitmis achas me b'sheretz? If one of these kikres became tummy b'sheretz, is kulan rishon. They all become a rishon. Even though later on they became disconnected, but since they became tummy together, they all became tummy together as a rishon. Now nitmas achas b'mashkin tmeim. If one of them became tummy b'mashkin tmeim, is also kulan shneir. So they all are mekabel the tumah together. Now mashkin tmeim would make the truma a sheni, so in Mela, so they become shneis. Even though later on they became separated, but they were makabel tuma together. They have a din of tuma. Now the nitmis achas men biyadayim, and yadayim makes truma into a shlishi. Nitmis achas men biyadayim is kulan shlishi. So then they're all shlishis. And aval pisha pirshan, even though they separated later, mipnei shehayu guf echad b'shas tumasim. While they became tamei, they were a guf echad. So therefore, they makabel tumah together. It's very different. In halacha yudches, we're talking about it was originally tamei. Then you took something tor and you connected it to it. So while it's connected by rishon and sheni, it has a din of the rishon and the sheni. Masha'in came by shlishi. It never assumes that din. Masha'in over here, we're talking, and once it becomes disconnected, it loses that din. Masha'in over here, we're talking about that it was makabel tumah. They were noishches together. And they were makabel tumah together. So then they were makabel tumah, the same madrega of tumah that the one that the sheretz touched, or the mashkin touched, or the yadayim tmeis touched. So that madrega of tumah goes for all the kippur.